Hey guys, so this is one of my personal favorite decks here. It is Galadriel, Light of Valinor. I'm very proud of this deck. It is made using only Lord of the Rings cards, including all the bonus materials. And Galadriel, Light of Valinor is 5 mana, 2, and then Bant, green, white, and blue for a 3/3 legendary creature, Elf Noble. And then she has Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get to choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. You either get to add 3 green mana, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, or you get to scry 2 and then draw a card. So the entire deck is built around her as an engine. We'll go over the simple parts first. So this is going to be our ramp here. We have a bunch of rocks, of course Soul Ring, Chromatic Lantern since it is a 3-color deck, Model of Unity, which incentivizes your opponents to vote with you. There is some voting sub-theme in this deck. Arcane Signet and Commander Sphere, and then File of Galadriel, which in addition to being a mana rock of any color that happens to have Galadriel's name in it, if you would draw a card while you have no cards in hand, you get to draw 2 instead. And if you would gain life while you have 5 or less life, you gain twice that much life instead. The drawing an extra card is fairly relevant. And then we've got Rampant Growth, Cultivate, and the Ring Goes South, since you will have a bunch of legendary creatures in this deck. Lord of the Rings had a lot of legendary elves. We do have a singular game changer in the deck in the One Ring. It is the only game changer that they printed in Lord of the Rings, and it felt fitting to have a Lord of the Rings deck that, you know, ran the One Ring. We've got a fairly straightforward mana base. We've got Ghost Quarter and Field of Ruin to get rid of your opponent's pesky lands. We've got Terramorphic Expanse and Evolving Wild to help you search out the right basics. Grey Havens, Exotic Orchard, Path of Ancestry, Command Tower, and Secluded Courtyard as like 3-color lands. And then we've got Vineglimmer Snarl, Flooded Grove, and Hinterland Harbor as Simic lands. Scattered Groves, Fortified Village, and Brushland as Selesnya lands. We've got Prairie Streams, Port Town, and Glacial Forest as Azorius lands. And then we've got our single-colored lands. We've got the Shire and Tranquil Thicket, and then a couple of forests. And then we've got Rivendell, Lonely Sandbar, a couple of islands. And then we've got Minas Tirith, Windbrisk Heights, and a couple of plains. So we'll start off with the elf package. We've got Elvish Harbinger, which helps you tutor up whatever elf you need and is a mana dork. We've got Wood Elves, which helps you ramp. Legolas, Counter of Kills. Whenever a creature an opponent control dies, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. And whenever you scry, you get to untap it. And there is a large scry sub-theme in the Lord of the Rings elves. We've got Haldir, Lorien Lieutenant, which can come in really big and then give all your elves a huge buff and vigilance. We've got Círdan the Shipwright, part of the voting sub-theme. Whenever he enters or attacks, each player votes for a player, then those votes are revealed. Each player draws a card for each vote they received, and whoever received no votes, they get to put a permanent card from their hand onto the battlefield. Which, putting permanents onto the battlefield does trigger Galadriel. They don't have to be cast. Elvish Warmaster is a nice cheap elf that can pump up your other elves in the late game and give them death touch, but more importantly, once per turn, whenever you play an elf, whenever an elf enters, you get to make another 1/1 green elf, so you get a free trigger on Galadriel. Farhaven Elf, a ramp elf. Legolas Master Archer. Whenever you cast a spell that targets a creature you don't control, he deals damage equal to its power up to one target creature. So he kind of gets to fight things for free. And whenever you cast a spell that targets him, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on him. We've got Elrond of the White Council, who lets you vote. Each player secretly votes for fellowship or aid, and then you reveal the choices. And for each fellowship vote, the voter has to choose a creature and you gain control of them. And then for each aid vote, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So at the very least, he puts a +1/+1 counter on all of your creatures and lets you steal some things. But more than likely, he's going to give you like 2 to 3 +1/+1 counters on all your creatures. Arwen, Mortal Queen, is indestructible, and you can remove its indestructible counter to give another creature indestructible. So good way to save your other elves, specifically Galadriel. She's very necessary for the engine to keep running. We've got Aragorn and Arwen Wed. Whenever it enters and whenever it attacks, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Arwen Indomitable. Whenever you scry, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on creature. We've got Galadriel Brigade, which is a 3-mana 2/2 elf lord that has squad for 2, so you can make a bunch of lords at once and give all your elves a huge power up. Rex Sage to get rid of your opponent's artifacts and enchantments. Arwen, Weaver of Hope. Each creature you control enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters on it equal to Arwen, Weaver of Hope's toughness. So it starts off as a 1/1, but as Galadriel and other cards grow her, she'll eventually start making all your elves that you play really huge. Galadriel Gift Giver, which whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you get to choose one. You can either put a +1/+1 counter on another creature, create a food token, or make a treasure token. So you can pump your creatures, or if you need mana, you can make treasures. If you're low on life, you can make food. We've got Elrond, Lord of Rivendell. Whenever it or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get to scry one. If it's the second time it's resolved, you get to have the ring tempt you. We've got Galadriel Ambush, which creates X/1/1 Green Elf Warrior creature tokens, where X is the number of attacking creatures, and you get to prevent all combat damage that would be dealt this turn by non-elves. It's Elf Fog. We've got Sylvan Offering, which lets you make a big old tree folk, and you get to make X/1/1 Green Elf Warrior creature tokens as well, which, you know, in return, you have to give a tree folk and some elf tokens to your opponents, but they can't make use of them like you can. We've got Celeborn the Wise. Whenever you attack with one or more elves, you get to scry one, and whenever you scry, he gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each card looked at. So he gets nice and big. Mirkwood Trapper is a 1/4, but whenever a player attacks you, one of their attacking creatures gets -2/-0, and whenever a player attacks somebody else, one of their creatures gets +2/+0. So it's a good way to incentivize your opponents from into attacking each other and not attacking you. We've got Legolas Greenleaf, which is a 3-mana 2/2 reach. It can't be blocked with creatures with power 2 or less, and whenever another legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on him. Whenever he deals damage to a player, you draw a card. And with all the legendary creatures that are in this deck, he gets big pretty quick. You've got Elvish Mariner. Whenever he attacks, you get to scry one, and whenever you scry, you get to tap X or non-land permanents, where X is the number of cards looked at while scrying. So you can see there's solid scry sub-theme, really works well. And then we've got Arrester of the Council, part of the voting sub-theme. Whenever players are finished voting, each opponent who voted for a choice you voted for makes a treasure. And then you get to scry X, where X is the number of opponents who voted for a choice you didn't vote for. And you get to draw a card. So more scry, more draw, more voting. Galadriel, Elven Queen, is another voting card. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if another elf entered the battlefield, starting with you, each player votes for Dominion or Guidance. If Dominion gets more votes, the ring tempts you, and you put a +1/+1 counter on your ring bearer. And if Guidance gets more votes, or the vote is tied, you get to draw a card. And then you've got Galadriel of Lothlorien. Whenever the ring tempts you, if you chose a creature other than her as your ring bearer, you get to scry 3. And whenever you scry, you may reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you get to put it onto the battlefield tab. And then we've got Elrond, Master of Healing, which is a 4-mana 4/4. Whenever you scry, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to X target creatures, where X is the number of cards looked at while scrying. And whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you get to draw a card. And then, of course, good old-fashioned Elvish Archdruid for that big mana bump. We've got Galadriel, White Rider, or Gandalf, White Rider, in the deck. Whenever you cast a spell, your creatures get +1/+0, and you get to scry 1, which you saw with all the scry synergies. He can quickly lock down your opponent's board so that you can get in for a nice big hit. And whenever he dies, you get to put him into your library 5th from the top, so he doesn't stay gone long. We've got some solid value cards in Elven Chorus, which lets you play elves off the top of your deck and makes it so that all your elves tap for a mana of any color. We've got Arboreal Alliance, which makes a nice big tree folk, but more importantly, whenever you attack with one or more elves, you get to populate. So you get to multiply your elf tokens pretty quick. And then we've got Rally of the Galadriel, which lets you make a token copy of a creature you control. But more importantly, it has Conspire, so you can do it a lot of times with all the creatures that are in this deck. We've got us a couple of finishers here in Songs of Eärendil, which at the end lets you put a flying counter on each of your creatures without flying. So it lets you get in with all of your elves. We've got Last March of the Ents, which for 8 mana is a lot, but it's uncounterable, and you get to draw cards equal to the greatest toughness amongst creatures you control, and then put any number of creature cards from your hand onto the battlefield. So it lets you slam out a bunch of dorks to finish the game off. Same with Genesis Wave, triple green and X to look at the top X cards, and then put any number of permanents with mana value X or less onto the battlefield. And then we've got Overwhelming Stampede, which for 5 mana you get to give all your creatures trample and +X/+X, where X is the greatest power amongst creatures you control. We've got a couple of removal spells in Windswift Slice, which lets you also make a bunch of green elf tokens, and Beast Within. And then segueing into the equipment package, Lothlorien Blade lets you deal damage to it to a creature a defending player controls equal to the equipped creature's power. So it's another good removal in the deck. We've got Lightning Greaves to help protect Galadriel, Mithril Coat to also help protect Galadriel, and then Anduril, Flame of the West, which is really nice because it makes 2 tokens whenever the equipped creature attacks. So it instantly, whatever creature that this is attached to when it attacks is instantly going to double trigger Galadriel. Some more powerful spells here. We've got Mists of Lorien, Galadriel's Dismissal, Raise the Palisade, and Dusk and Dawn as pseudo board wipes in the deck. Galadriel's Dismissal is really nice because you can either use it to phase out one of your creatures to protect it, or you can use it to phase out all of your opponent's creatures to get in for a nice big attack. We've got Lost Owl Calling, which with all of the scry synergies in the deck will get you a extra turn pretty quickly. We've got Plea for Power, which is a voting card that makes your opponents vote on whether or not you get to Time Walk or Ancestral Recall. Both are great options. Heroic Intervention to help protect your crew, and Courageous Resolve to also help protect your crew. And then we've got a couple of recursion spells in Marshal's Anthem, Mirkwood Elk, and Sail into the West, which either lets you wheel or return some permanents from your graveyard to your hand. But yeah, this is my Galadriel Light of Valinor deck. Like I said, it's Lord of the Rings only. So its power level is realistically only about a 3.5. But I really like the fact that it's so thematic. You know, it feels very Lords of the Rings when you play it. But yeah, y'all should let me know whether or not you think I should make improvements to it using the Hobbit set. I'm kind of iffy about it because one of the things that I like about making these decks that are one set only is that, you know, theoretically there is an endpoint to the deck. You know, most commander decks, it feels like every time you open them you have to add new cards to it. Whereas with the stipulation of only having one set, kind of makes it so that, you know, once I have every card in the set, there is no improving the deck. But yeah, let me know what you guys think on that. I hope you enjoyed my video. Please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Y'all have an incredible night.